And goal.
Blue 58, go!
This is the Huddle with Bill Michaels.
Welcome all. We are broadcasting live. We're at Swagger Sports Bar, which you can find us at the Root River Center. And that is in Franklin, Wisconsin, here by the bowling alley. You can come on in and say hello. They got a dart league coming in a little bit later on tonight and some good people on hand already. So thanks to many of you. This is our second to last Huddle, brought to you by Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the Bill Michaels Sports Talk Network. And it's our second to last one of the season. Kind of sad when the season winds down, although the anticipation for what is about to come and the week-long broadcast out in L.A. looks to be promising and a lot of fun. But nevertheless, we are here tonight. So glad to have you on board. Ben Kenny producing back in the studio. Coming up in a little bit, we're going to be talking with Ryan O'Halloran. He covers the Broncos for the Denver Post. We're going to talk with him about Nathaniel Hackett. We heard from Eric Goodman, and we're going to hear from some of that. Eric Goodman of Mile High Sports. We're going to hear some of that conversation coming up here in just a little bit as well. Then Dave Schrader from WBAY TV in Green Bay is going to join us after the top of the hour. But we're going to catch up a little bit as to what's going on throughout the rest of the National Football League. You've got, first and foremost, the Chicago Bears to make an announcement. The Bears are going to hire the Colts' ex-defensive coordinator, Matt Eberflus, and he is going to become their head coach. The Bears hired him today. He is 51, considered a candidate for the Jacksonville Jaguars head coaching vacancy as well. He's going to join the new general manager, Ryan Poles, in taking over the Bears team that went 6-11 last year under Matt Nagy, and Ryan Pace missed the playoffs in 9 of the past 11 years. They've got a young quarterback, but they don't have a lot around that quarterback. So they've got a job to do in rebuilding that team. The Chicago Bears also interviewed the Cowboys defensive coordinator, Dan Quinn, who has now pulled his name out of any contention for any other job. He is going to remain in Dallas as their defensive coordinator. And they also talked to the former Lions head coach, Jim Caldwell. Eberflus has spent the past 4 seasons as the Colts defensive coordinator, as I had mentioned, under Frank Reich. And his defense finished in the top 10 in scoring 3 times, including being tied for 9th in 2021 at 21.5 points per game. He's going to inherit a Bears team ranked 6th in the National Football League in total defense, but struggled offensively and endured a lot of instability at that quarterback position. Andy Dalton started out, then he got hurt, then it was Justin Fields. He got hurt, then Dalton back in, and he got hurt again, then Justin Fields. And the first big question for Eberflus in Chicago is going to be selecting an offensive coordinator, since a big part of the job for the new coach will be solidifying the quarterback position. And that's really haunted that franchise for a long, long time. The Bears do not have a first-round draft choice this year because they traded that away to select Justin Fields last season, who he has showed flashes of some potential and as a runner as well. Chicago, by the way, went 2-8 in the 10 games that Fields started this past season. Like I said, he showed flashes and gave you some excitement, but really didn't do too much beyond that. So we're gonna kind of anticipate who the offensive coordinator is going to be in Chicago. The Bears made it 2 postseason appearances in their 4 years under Matt Nagy, but last won a playoff game all the way back in 2010, as we know. That was the year that they ended up going to the NFC Championship game and got beat by the Green Bay Packers. And they have not appeared in a Super Bowl after the 2006 season. And that was a game in which the Colts won that Super Bowl. So Eberflus, a former linebacker at the University of Toledo, began his coaching career at his alma mater and hometown school, also interviewed for the head coaching job last year after his 3rd season with the Colts, where he developed a reputation for demanding relentless effort out of his players. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't know how quickly the turnaround, if at all, can happen in Chicago, but certainly there's going to be a lot of eyes on the Windy City as they now have gotten their guy. In the meantime, the Denver Broncos found their man, and that is none other than Nathaniel Hackett. So Nathaniel Hackett, he agrees to become the Broncos head coach, the former offensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers. And he's going to be the team announced that today, and Hackett worked with the quarterbacks at all phases on the developmental side. He was going to interview with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they wanted him to develop their young quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, but he never got out of Denver. They hired him The Broncos stepped in Wednesday night to get a deal done to prevent him from going to Jacksonville, according to Adam Schefter of ESPN, and it marks Hackett's first stint as a head coach, and he becomes Denver's fourth different coach since the start of the 2016 season. He replaces Vic Fangio, who was fired earlier this month after going at 7-10 last season. The Broncos' fifth consecutive losing season, by the way, and they believe a lot of it has to do with the quarterback position and the stagnation of the offense. And Hackett's hiring is going to bring immediate speculation about the Broncos trying to get Aaron Rodgers, we all know, and that's where the dominoes begin to fall. And perhaps, if they can get Rodgers, they want to also get Davante Adams, who is set to hit free agency come March. And Rodgers turned 38 last month in the midst of what could be, and most likely will be, his fourth MVP season. And he's contemplating his future right now, including retirement after the Packers' ugly and somewhat unexpected exit from the postseason last weekend, and when the top seed was upset at home 13-10, and an ugly performance by the offense and the special teams by the 49ers. Now, Hackett, he emerged as the front runner on his own merits, however, including his stellar work with quarterback Blake Bortles as a Jacksonville offensive coordinator from 2016 to 2018. He went to Green Bay. He helped LaFleur win a record 39 games in his first 3 seasons as head coach. All of the offensive assistants interviewed by the Broncos, Hackett had the deepest resume as a former play caller for both Buffalo and Jacksonville before his time with the Packers, and they want somebody that's going to come in and be an offensive-minded guy. So you got a defensive-minded guy going to Chicago, an offensive-minded guy going to Denver, and Denver then is hoping to lure away Aaron Rodgers, and maybe he then becomes the next quarterback. Now, we'll have to wait and see. Rodgers there's a lot down the road before anything like that would even be considered to be happening, before he would, end up as a Denver Bronco. First of all, he has to say, I want to come back. And then secondly, there has to be the determination as to whether or not, they could afford him back. So we'll see. And I really like, Nathaniel Hackett. I like all the things that he had to say. So it's kind of tough to see him go, but nevertheless, kudos to him as well. In the meantime, Eric Goodman joined me on the show yesterday. And Eric Goodman from Mile High Sports has always been in the forefront of all of this when he talks about the possibility of Aaron Rodgers becoming the next quarterback of the Denver Broncos. This is what Eric Goodman from Mile High Sports had to say, talking about Rodgers and what the Broncos could possibly offer him to come there.
I think that when you look at a guy like Aaron Rodgers and where he's at with the Packers, which team is going to have a better roster next year? The Packers or the Broncos? The Broncos, I don't want to – it's such lazy analysis to say you're a quarterback away, specifically when you have Mahomes and Allen, Burrow, and Herbert all in the AFC. Because we saw what happened in that Bills-Chiefs game, how important the quarterback position is. But when you look at offensive talent, what the Broncos have at the skill position players, he won't be locking on to one guy. He can lock on to Cortland Sutton, who is a Pro Bowl type player. He can lock on to Tim Patrick. He can lock on to Jerry Jeudy. He can lock on to KJ Hamler. And Javonte Williams just made the all-rookie team. He has a lot of weapons he can choose from. Oh, and I didn't even bring up Noah Fant. He has more offensive options. When I look at Tom Brady, I think that Bill Belichick looked at Tom Brady and said, I know that you've taken pay cuts, but I really don't need to beef up that side of the ball because you're Tom Brady and you'll find a way to make it happen. And generally speaking, he has, right? And I know what you're saying about Davante Adams, where you lock onto him. I was listening to your show earlier where people are saying, well, he locks onto him too much. So what? I think Joe Montana locked onto Jerry Rice a lot, and they had some pretty good success. But to your point, Davante Adams is Aaron Rodgers' whoopee. He's his safe blue blanket when he needs something to be done. But at the end of the day, in a NFC that really hasn't been overly strong, they still haven't gotten it done. They have more weapons here for Aaron Rodgers. Just like when Tom Brady went to Tampa last year, he finally had some serious offensive weapons in Antonio Brown, in Gronkowski. And I understand Brown's a problem and Gronkowski's old. But they also had Evans. They also have Godwin. They had more weapons for him. And look what he did. And ironically, they didn't even win a Super Bowl because of their offense. They won a Super Bowl because they shut down Patrick Mahomes defensively.
Right. So there you go. That was Eric Goodman talking about what the Broncos, as an offensive unit, could offer Rodgers. So Goodman then talks about why Rodgers would go to the AFC. And then he talks about the difference with Luke Getsy, Nathaniel Hackett, and because both guys were going to originally interview for the job, Hackett ended up getting it, obviously, but he talks about why Rodgers would go to the Broncos to begin with.
Well, I mean, let's start with Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert in your own division. Let's start with in the AFC, you have a Brady Manning rivalry starting to brew already with Mahomes and Josh Allen. Then throw in Joe Burrow, who essentially could be the Ben Roethlisberger foil, who wins a couple of Super Bowls. But the AFC is loaded with great quarterbacks, and I haven't even brought up Herbert or Trevor Lawrence. The AFC is going to be loaded. If you want to win as a quarterback, you stay in the NFC. And you specifically stay in the division that the Packers are in, because who knows what the hell the Bears and the Lions are going to do. But getting to the whole point about Nathaniel Hackett, I don't believe that the Broncos are looking at their head coaching position with necessarily direct ties to Aaron Rodgers. If Rodgers says, I want to go to Denver, and the Packers agree to a trade before they hire a head coach, but you have to hire Hackett, then I think the Broncos make that move. But listen, you have forgotten more about the Packers than I know. But I don't know if you have brought this up on the show, but this is what I've been told by other people. Rodgers' relationship isn't necessarily with Hackett or with LaFleur. It's with Getsy. Getsy, I've been told, is his guy. Rodgers wanted LaFleur to bring Getsy back. It is my understanding that Getsy played a strong role in Devontae Adams' growth as a player. So I think that Getsy would be the smarter hire as an offensive coordinator than Hackett as the head coach.
So there you go. That's Aaron Goodman of Mile High Sports. Let's do this. We'll step away. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We got a lot more. The Bill Michaels Huddle brought to you by our friends at Bud Light, coming up right after this.
Bill Michaels will resume in 1 minute.
Okay, I'm back. It says I got full bars. It says I'm good.
Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
Was down the middle and good. 49ers win it. San Francisco is moving on with a 13-10 win here at Lambeau. And this crowd and that Packers team is stunned.
So many guys' contracts are up or on the brink or salary cap stuff. So a lot of decisions to be made. I don't want to be a part of a rebuild.
The sports world and football fans everywhere now wondering what is next for NFL MVP Aaron Rodgers now that his Packers are out of play after last night's crushing defeat against the 49ers. Rodgers says the loss was a shock, and he's going to take some time to think about what might come next after 17 seasons with the Packers.
Yeah, the season came to an end for the Green Bay Packers and for Aaron Rodgers, as we all know what happened. So it's now you wait and see. You wait and find out what Aaron Rodgers is going to think and what he's going to do, and you like he said, he's going to wait to not necessarily past free agency, but probably up until it, and then after that, you'll find out what Aaron's going to decide, and he's going to sit down with Goody and the gang, and then they're going to see what they can do about getting him back into the fold if they can, and figure it out monetarily. Otherwise, they'll just part ways, agree to disagree, I guess, and then figure out what Aaron wants to do beyond that. So there you have it. 877-867-6070. If you want to chime in tonight, you can. I know it's a little bit different. We don't have a ton of guests this evening. It's just kind of an open conversation as the season has wound down now, as we all know. And the Packers, no longer a part of it. You got big games coming up this weekend, the conference championships. Cincinnati taking on the Kansas City Chiefs, the 49ers taking on the Rams. Picking both home teams to win those contests is 3 out of the 4 road teams won last week. San Francisco, obviously, in Green Bay. You had Kansas City was the home winner. Cincinnati got a win as well. And then the L.A. Rams, they going down to Tampa Bay, and they ended up knocking off Tom Brady and company. So what a weekend. I mean, what an incredible weekend it was when it came to the play on the field and watching all of those contests take place. It was pretty spectacular, just as far as excitement goes. And it also just validates that the NFL just right now reigns supreme. This one is from Max, who says, do you think that Russell Wilson could end up in Green Bay? No, I don't. They're not going to trade Rodgers for Wilson. That's not going to happen. Now, if Rodgers would leave and then there was a free agent opening and they could get Russell Wilson, yes, but you don't want to jump from the frying pan into the fire when you talk about the ability to afford someone. Now, there's been talk about the possibility of, say, a guy like Derek Carr coming to Green Bay, because Derek Carr and Devontae Adams obviously have played together. So we'll wait and see there. But I don't think that's gonna happen. As far as trading him out to Las Vegas. I mean, stranger things have happened, don't get me wrong, but I just don't think that's going to happen. This one is also from a Mike, who says, what wide receiver do the Packers try and re-sign? I think you're going to try to bring them all back. Now, whether or not you bring back like an Alan Lazard and such, you have to wait and see. But I think you're going to try to bring back as many. Now, I don't think and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you're bringing back Randall Cobb. I think this was it for Randall Cobb. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, if you can bring him back for a fair price, you would. He's got to be healthy, but you would. I think Equanimeous St. Brown has seen his better days. I think Equanimeous St. Brown is probably on his way out the door. But beyond that, I mean, I don't think you're going to have Juwan Winfrey, and you got Amari Rogers, but they're going to have to make some. They're going to have to pick some guys.
Sorry about that, Ben Kenny here. So we're experiencing some technical difficulties with Bill on site. Here's what we're going to do. Gary Gramling of Sports Illustrated joined the show earlier today to talk about this weekend slate of NFL games. Aaron Rodgers, Nathaniel Hackett being hired in Denver. Here's some of that interview as we try to get Bill back online.
First of all, let's go back to last weekend. Had to be one of the most exciting weekends of divisional round football, I think.
Remember Bengals played the Titans? I seem to remember that game, but that's the kind of weekend it was.
So give me your thoughts. Let's talk about the matchups first and foremost coming up this weekend. Give me your thoughts. Joe Burrow obviously riding a hot hand into Arrowhead, but that offensive line stinks. They're going to get him killed. 9 sacks by the Tennessee Titans. I'm not going to say that the defense is as good in Kansas City, but certainly they're going to get after him, and they're going to put a ton of pressure on him. In the meantime, they got to figure out a way to stop the miraculousness that is Patrick Mahomes, who, as the second half of the season got away, he really began to come on and look like Patrick Mahomes again. I don't know how Cincinnati's going to get the win. You tell me.
Yeah, look, they got to go shot for shot with Burrow has to go shot for shot with Patrick Mahomes. I'm kind of two minds on the Bengals protection issues. It's been an issue all year. This isn't new. Joe Burrow really manages it well. Last week, what you saw was they basically took all his hot reads away. He was very hesitant because of that. Usually, he can extend plays a little bit within the pocket, and he couldn't do that because Jeffrey Simmons was in his lap basically every time he tried to do that. So it's a problem. To me, it's kind of a red flag that the Bengals didn't have any adjustment to it. They didn't have any counterpunch to throw out there. It ended up being just, they got a couple turnovers. Jamar Chase, who is, I don't think I'm surprising anyone when I say he is absolutely incredible. He pulled out a couple of long catch and runs that set him up for points, and they got out of there. But, boy, they were awfully lucky to get out of there. And I know they beat the Chiefs a couple of weeks ago, but, man, it's tough to figure out a scenario without something really weird happening out there in their favor.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, all the road teams were winning except for the Chiefs last week. This week, I have the 2 home teams winning these contests. You go to the game that's going to be out in L.A., and the 49ers, even though Shanahan has never lost to McVay, I think that right now, with Matthew Stafford kind of feeling it, finally giving you that quarterback play that they were expecting, McVay and his guys at home amped up, really ready to go. I get the sense that even though this magic carpet ride that San Francisco's on seems to be something that's almost unstoppable, I think they get stopped out in L.A. against the Rams.
There's really, outside of the history of the two teams, there's not a whole lot of reason you'd say the 49ers should go out and win that game. I mean, they're a good team. We're in the playoffs. So you can always pull out a win. But just logically, I mean, the gap between the quarterbacks, it's just does Kyle Shanahan have something up his sleeve that we just haven't really seen before? I don't think so. It's just a matter of, do the Rams get 49ers ball carriers, whether it be Eli Mitchell or Debo or Kittle and Ayuk on run after catch stuff? Do they get those guys on the ground? And look, they did last time, and the game kind of got away from them in a weird way. I just don't think it happens again. I think the Rams do win that one.
I completely agree. Now we look at Nathaniel Hackett going out to Denver, and everybody expects at some point whether or not it's going to be Luke Getsy moving up and getting the offensive coordinator role here, or Stenovich going out there and getting the coordinator role. Things are going to change in Green Bay. Let's talk about the Denver Broncos. They have quite a bit of cap space, close to $40 million worth. They clearly have made it, an obvious statement that they want to go after Aaron Rodgers if indeed Rodgers wants to be traded. They bring in Nathaniel Hackett to do just that, maybe to throw out that lure and try to snag the big fish in the pond. Give me your thoughts on the Broncos and what's going on out there.
Well, yeah, look, logically, their plan B for Aaron Rodgers, they have to be at this point with what they've built out there. where I land, and we know Aaron loves Nathaniel Hackett, and he will probably poach one of those two guys, whether it be a Mahomes Chiefs team or even a Josh Allen Bills type of team, they could pop in 2023. Is he at a point in his life and career right now where he wants to go through rebuild is not quite the right word, but a mini rebuild, a bit of a get to know you kind of year where you kind of probably end up losing the year. And when I say losing the year, I mean you're not going to make the Super Bowl. So that's really the only thing he has to play for at this point.
Do you think there's, and this is the back alley type of speak, but do you think there's any possibility the Packers then turn around and trade away Jordan Love to one of these teams? Because, Love and Rodgers have the same agent or same agency, but do you think that Jordan Love gets dealt and the Packers then garner some draft choices in that realm?
I don't think so, just because I don't know what the market is. He's such an unknown, and he really was a guy. The teams that were interested in Jordan Love 2 years ago, he's a guy you want to get in there and say, let's get him in our program for 2 years and see where we go. Maybe the story would have been a little bit differently if he went out and lit the Chiefs on fire in that one game. I don't think that was a red flag type of performance, but it also was a performance that didn't make anyone say, like, boy, this guy, maybe we make a run at him. Maybe we trade a couple draft picks at this point. So I don't think it's realistic. That said, it only takes one team, and it's not a very good quarterback market out there this offseason. But I think a lot of teams who would be looking to sort of a long-term plan at the quarterback position, I think everyone's got their eyes on the 2023 draft more than trying to get someone young from another organization at this point.
Mike McCarthy goes to Dallas with his pedigree and his record. Obviously, it came with kind of the afterwash of what happened in Green Bay at the end. But he goes down there. He has a pretty decent season. Good defense, good offense. Dan Quinn looks like he's going to stay now, we find out. And then Sean Payton retires. And the minute he does, Dallas Cowboy fans want Mike McCarthy gone. They want Payton in there as the head guy. Give me your thoughts as to what's going on down in Dallas, if anything, because we know Jerry can be somewhat unpredictable.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is Mike McCarthy is just kind of on notice now. They're not going to make a move this offseason, or I would say I'd be shocked if they made a move this offseason. But obviously, I mean, Sean Payton is just going to absolutely haunt that coaching staff here in 2022, and we'll see how it goes, because that is look. The way they lost that playoff game is it's almost the worst possible way you could do it, because those of us who watch from the outside, the things we can criticize with confidence and rightly is stuff like game management stuff, clock management stuff. When you botch it as badly as they did, you just open yourself to that. Even if they had a great game plan, even if it was just some bad breaks that cost you the game, people will jump on you for that. And we've seen that's what happened with Mike McCarthy here. But that is, I mean, look, that's a Super Bowl contender there. They should be going deep into the playoffs. If they don't win one or two playoff games, I mean, look, it's trite to put it this way, but if they're not playing conference championship weekend next year, I mean, yeah, I think there's a real good chance they make a change. If they think they can get Sean Payton, then I think there's a really good chance they could get him.
Now in Green Bay, we all know we're waiting for Aaron Rodgers to make some type of a decision. But give me your thoughts on the way the season ended and how it ended. We all knew the special teams were bad. We just didn't think that they would show up and be this catastrophically bad at the end of the season. But the way the Packers went down, give me your thoughts there.
I know, look, it's just sort of the misery of being a Packers fan at this point, where your season just comes down to what happens in January. There is, there's nothing structurally wrong. I don't think you look at this team and say, like, well, here's a fatal. Obviously the special teams have to get better, but that's not something that takes a huge commitment of resources in order to fix. it's there. And even if so, let's say the scenarios, because I still think it's more likely than not Aaron Rodgers is back there. If that is the scenario that plays out, even if you lose some pieces, and obviously they're going to have to make some changes with the cap situation, but even if you lose a couple pieces, I mean, they just went basically the entire second half of the season without their best pass rusher and then without their best cover cornerback, and they were fine. I mean, if you have Aaron Rodgers there and you bring Devontae Adams back, that is going to be a Super Bowl contender there, especially in that division where you also have some margin for error during the regular season, because no one in that division is going to make a run at even 9 or 10 wins next season.
I still think that the legacy of Aaron Rodgers is forever going to be tied to Green Bay, and if he comes back, I know they're in salary cap jail, just about $40 million over the cap right now, and they're going to have some bloodletting. But if he comes back and plays next year, if you had to hedge your bets, what uniform is he going to be wearing?
I still think he comes back. I certainly, the Broncos have emerged as the top challenger here, but if we're going to put percentages on it, I put it at like 74% he's back in Green Bay. Let's call it, I'll do the math real good, 24% that he's in Denver and percent he is elsewhere.
Yeah, I don't think he ends up too many other places. I think either he would walk away from the game or try to extend his legacy here in Green Bay. Now, that begs the question, with what he wants, does Devontae Adams, with the price that he wants to bring, end up back in Green Bay?
I think he has to. I think those two are kind of if not officially, I think it's kind of a package deal that you have to do that at this point. I mean, Aaron Rodgers basically made him go out and trade a draft pick for Randall Cobb last offseason. And, if that's the way he's going to approach Randall Cobb, he certainly has to make that kind of stance with Devontae Adams, who is absolutely – look, if they brought Rodgers back and not Adams, it's different. It's still a team that's going to win the NFC North. They're not going to be on that same level as, let's say the Rams, the 49ers, the Cowboys in the NFC. So, yeah, I think they're both back or they're both gone. And I do think, as dire as it does sound when you sort of, the $40 million over the cap, et cetera, I think, if you look down in New Orleans during the late Drew Brees years, I think you can finagle these things and sort of pass the buck off to a later year and just put the paint.
Well, there you go. I think our buddy ended, so that's okay. We're going to do this. We're going to step away, take a quick break. We're going to come back. We're broadcasting live, by the way. We're at Swagger Sports Bar. We're here in Root River Center, and we're in Franklin, Wisconsin. It's the Bill Michaels Huddle. It's brought to you by Bud Light. Talking a lot of Packers tonight, and I believe we got all our technical stuff kind of figured out, which is awesome. So hang in there. We got a lot more coming up, broadcasting live down here. We will be back coming up right after this.
This is the Huddle with Bill Michaels on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Network.
Bill Michaels will resume in 5 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 4 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 1 minute. Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
Welcome back. Glad to have you. We are broadcasting live at Swagger Bar, Swagger Sports Bar. We are in at Root River Center in Franklin. Glad to have you. So I want to say hi and shout out to the safety doc who is saying hi. Also, got our buddy Steven out there as well. And he said, so in hindsight, maybe it was better to start the offensive line that won all year long. I said that from the beginning. When you, I mean, don't get me wrong. When you get starters back, Billy Turner and company and Josh Myers, you want to start those guys, but moving guys around and Josh Nyman, who had done yeoman's work all season long, not to even see the field, who had been one of the better offensive linemen the Packers had going into that contest. When he doesn't see the field, it's a little disconcerting. So, I mean, there's a lot of things you can look at in this game. You can say that A.J. Dillon going down with the chest injury, with the rib injury. That was a big moment. The offensive line giving up numerous pressures on Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers, locking on Devontae Adams a couple of times when we could clearly see that there were others that were open, especially on the 3rd and long and going downfield instead of taking Alan Lazard across the middle, who was wide open. Then you've got, obviously, the special teams and the consistent failures of the special teams. So it was and after the game, we talked about this. If the Packers say the special teams would have just performed average, and not given up the blocked punt, not given up the blocked field goal, yardage and such, Packers win the game. Packers win the game. Say the offense does anything at all, puts up 1 or 2 scores. Maybe you don't have Mercedes Lewis fumbling the football, which kind of took the air out of things. They go in and score. Any of that wins the game. What they could not have happen was 2/3 of their team, special teams in the offense, fail epically. And that's what happened. So, and again, it goes back to, when you got to be firing on all phases. You got to be doing things well in all phases to win a game. You got to have solid offense, good defense, and the defense was good. The defense, man, it held the 49ers to 36.4% on third down in that game, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, they were that good. But what happened was Packers couldn't run the ball. And when they couldn't run the ball, the short passing game was taken away because they were crashing down on Rodgers and really cutting off the short outs. So they wanted to go downfield. Well, in doing downfield and set up, when you don't have time because your quarterback's under pressure. So while the passing yards favored the Packers, when you look at 196 yards passing, that's nowhere near what the Packers would normally do. And what they give up, like 100 yards passing, and I think it was like 100 yards rushing. The 49ers rushed for 100 yards, but it was just, Elijah Mitchell was okay, Deebo Samuel was okay. Nothing was spectacular in that ball game, but they did just enough, and they gave up obviously the blocked punt for a touchdown, and that was it. I mean, we can talk about anything you want, but you failed in 2 phases of the game. And Jimmy Garoppolo, he did not play well. As a matter of fact, it's almost like they won in spite of him as opposed to winning because of him. But Jimmy Garoppolo was not good. We know that. So there was a lot of things that went wrong. And in that game, it was, you feel bad for Mercedes Lewis because he ended up fumbling the football away, but there was numerous fumbles early in that game until guys got really acclimated with how slick and hard the ball was. There was numerous handling of the football issues, without a doubt. Steve wants to know, if we lose Rodgers, what is the status of Deshaun Watson? Haven't heard a thing about his case. That is a great question. There is absolutely nothing right now that's out there on Deshaun Watson. Nothing. I don't know where that case specifically stands, but we have not heard anything publicly about that. We know that he was a healthy scratch all season long by the Houston Texans. They did not play him. They did not trade him. Everybody's in limbo right now as to what's going to go on. I would assume there's going to be something disciplinary-wise eventually down the road, but you don't know what, because you don't know what the legal process is doing right now. And you've not heard anything since some of the accusers spoke out, and that was it. So it's a real weird scenario because it just went away. And we'll see what Deshaun Watson's offseason. And there's going to be some news in that offseason regarding Deshaun Watson. It has to be, because you can't let him sit in limbo again. By the way, Mark says, is Maurice Drayton not fired yet? Why? Because I would assume this is what's going to happen. It's either going to happen tomorrow or it's going to happen over the weekend quietly. That's the way the Packers like to do things, not to be in the news cycle headline-wise. But you would expect that the evaluations are going on. What they do is on the day after the game, you look at the film. Guys come in and start cleaning out their lockers, and then they leave. And then what happens is the next day or two, the entire team will meet with their position coaches and the head coach, and they'll talk to them about what the future holds, especially if you're under contract, what they want you to do, what they want you to work on, where you might want to be health-wise, weight-wise. They'll go through all of that. They'll do an evaluation. And then the evaluation of the coaches comes after that. And, that's why I would assume that most of the guys have already been evaluated by the coaches. They've already spoke to the coaching staff. And now the coaching staff is going to start coming in and sitting down and talking with Matt LaFleur and with the front office about what it is they want, what direction they're going to go, and how they're going to handle things. And that then will be what, when they make the decision on Maurice Strait. And I got to think like you that at some point here in the next 24, 48 hours, the black smoke is going to start pouring out of Lambeau Field, letting us know that there's been some coaching firings and that they are now in the market for some new coaches regarding that. Let's do this. We're going to step away, take a quick break. We're going to come back. We got a lot more. We are broadcasting live down here at Swagger Sports Bar, in the Root River Center down here in Franklin. We got more coming up right after this.
This is the Huddle with Bill Michaels on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Network.
Bill Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 1 minute. Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
Every conversation I've been involved in with, with Goody and Russ and Mark, we're all on the same page there. So there's no debate.
Those are the words of Matt LaFleur. Welcome back to the program. We are broadcasting live at Swagger Sports Bar, Root River Center. We're in Franklin, Wisconsin. It's the Bill Michaels Huddle. Brought to you by our friends at Bud Light. They are the official beer sponsor of the Bill Michaels Sports Talk Network. I got one up here, as a matter of fact, for those of you watching on the Bud Light live stream. And Alex and Ron and Steve and everybody chiming in. Certainly appreciate you guys being a part of the Bud Light live stream. And this one is from Ron, who said, I said it before, we played them. Garoppolo could not throw outside. Everything, as always, with him is over the middle. Couldn't stop it when they needed to. I'm going to say this, though, Ron. This was nowhere near on the This was not on the defense at all. They stopped him a majority of the time. Now there were some drops, admittedly, because of the weather, no doubt. But the defense, I give all the credit in the world to the defense. Here's the other thing to think about. Joe Barry's defense played pretty well. Pretty well. Right? I think we could all agree upon that. Played pretty well. And he got his pieces back, and they were able to put pressure on Garoppolo and company and do a pretty solid job. Garoppolo under pressure. He was hit and pressured, I think, like 7 or 8 times. He was sacked 4 times, picked off once, did not throw a touchdown in the game. He was only 11 of 19. So it was a really bad performance for Jimmy Garoppolo. So here's my question. We've seen the defense play pretty well for the majority of the season, right? It's played pretty well for a majority of the season. Here's the question now. Let's say next year there isn't Za'Darius, there isn't Preston, there isn't Devondre Campbell. You have Jair, maybe no Adrian Amos. Depends on who stays and who goes. Maybe they keep Rasul Douglas. Maybe they don't. You know what I mean? So if the defense gets depleted, Rashawn Gary's there, but no Preston on the opposite side. Kenny Clark's there, but some of that depth is gone. You're waiting for TJ Slayton to really kind of emerge. You start to think about that. If the defense slides statistically, and we know the talent is not there, do you then turn around and blame Joe Barry for where the defensive statistics are? Or do you say Joe Barry gets a pass because the talent level had been depleted? Because you got to think about that now, right? That you got to think about that. Because it's not as easy as just saying, wow, Joe Barry's defense stinks. Because when they needed him the most, the first game, the only game this year in the postseason, that defense was lights out for the most part. Think of it. They only gave up 106 yards rushing. They gave up 131 passing. They held the quarterback to no touchdowns, 1 pick, and a 57.1 quarterback rating. Kittle had 4 catches for 63 yards, kept him out of the end zone. Samuel out of the end zone. Mitchell out of the end zone. Jennings, Ayuk didn't have a catch. So do you then say, you know what? If he's got talent, if Joe Barry has talent, he can be a pretty good defensive coordinator. But if it's a bad defense next year, do you blame the personnel and the guy acquiring the personnel, or do you blame the defensive coordinator? Because I think you have to look at the personnel, right? I was thinking about that today when we were talking about all this, and it kind of slipped my mind when we were on the air. But Joe Barry, whose defense played well in the postseason, he kind of earned himself a little pass. But we'll wait and see what this defense looks like next year. So think about that when you start to get into your discussions, you know. John says, Rodgers stays or goes. One thing is clear, a complete rebuild is on the horizon. Rather, it's a year or two from now. I don't think you have to go with a complete rebuild because your salary cap is going to go up so dramatically. So with some of the money you're going to have, you don't have to go through a complete rebuild. I will agree with you, though, that Brian Gutekunst, for some of the holes that this team may have, is going to have to hit. You're going to have to hit on some wide receivers. You're going to have to hit on tight end, another tight end. You're going to have to hit on an outside pass rusher and maybe a safety. You're going to have to hit in those areas. And if you don't bring back Devondre Campbell, you have got to find yourself a middle linebacker. And all this giant steaming pant load of crap about how we don't value the linebackers the way you guys do and blah, blah, blah. It's because now that you had one and you saw the way he's supposed to perform and what a good middle linebacker can do, how he can drop into coverage, he can support the run, he can rush the passer, all those different things that they had him doing. Now that all that stuff is out there, oh boy, you better believe that you should value a good middle linebacker. Because if you've got one, you'll love it. If you don't have one, you ignore it. It's kind of like having a bad closer in baseball. Well, we're going to do it by committee. We really don't value that. It's because you don't have one. But if you had one, you'd be in love with it because that's what you're supposed to do. John says Ted Thompson loaded that defense with projects and hidden gems, and that cursed Dom Capers for years. He put round pegs in square holes. You know, he didn't, and you know, I appreciate the fact that Ted has since passed, but he was putting square pegs in round holes. No doubt about that. You go back through the years, you look at the Dayton Jones picks. You know what I'm saying? Josh Boyd being your defensive end. Sam Barrington at the linebacker position. Nick Perry. Jarrell Worthy. Those guys. Jerron McMillan. Terrell Manning. They ringing a bell? They ringing a bell? DJ Smith. Ricky Elmore. Lawrence Guy. You know, Mike Neal. Man, there was some bad play. Bad play. You know, one of his better pickups for the money was C.J. Wilson, the 7th-round draft choice who helped that team win a Super Bowl with that big, beefy body that he had, and helped them win a Super Bowl that year. But, yeah, start thinking about all those guys that this team picked up. Yeah, it was ugly for a while. Let's do this. We're going to step away. 1 hour down, 1 hour yet to go. Dave Schrader, WBAY-TV in Green Bay. He's going to join us coming out of the chute on the next side. Stay tuned. We got a lot more of the Bill Michaels Huddle. It's brought to you by Bud Light. We are broadcasting live at Swagger Sports Bar in the Root River Center. We're here on Rawson Avenue in Franklin, Wisconsin. Come on by. We're, again, brought to you by our friends at Bud Light. Stay tuned. We got a lot more coming up right after this.
This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Well, the Packers need a new offensive coordinator. That's after the Broncos hired Nathaniel Hackett as their new head coach. Hackett had been with the Packers the last 3 years, helping the team lead the NFL in scoring in 2020. His departure leaves a big void. Coach Matt LaFleur was asked earlier this week if they plan to promote from within if Hackett got a head coaching job.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a lot of confidence in the guys that we have on our staff. We got so many good guys, and it's not going to be an easy decision. Let me just tell you that.
Quarterbacks coach Luke Getsy and offensive line coach Adam Stanovich are the likely candidates to move up to the OC role. However, whichever one doesn't get it is thought to be a candidate to be Hackett's OC in Denver. Turning to the Badgers, they could announce their new offensive coordinator as early as today. That's after the official job posting expired last night. The man reportedly tapped for the job, Ravens tight ends coach Bobby Ingram. He spent time with Coach Paul Chryst at Pittsburgh as his wide receivers coach.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
When a company only does business in Wisconsin, that's Wisconsin Strong. Rural Mutual provides all lines of insurance, including commercial, farm, home, and auto. And your premiums stay right here to keep Wisconsin strong. Local agents, local underwriters, local claims adjusters.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Well, the Bucs going to be back home tomorrow night to face the Knicks. Milwaukee has really struggled of late, losing 7 of their last 12 games, including to Cleveland last night. And the Badgers also back in action tonight in Nebraska. UW came into the game, but in a tie for second place in the Big Ten with Michigan State, a half game back of Illinois. After this, Wisconsin will welcome Minnesota to town on Sunday. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil-Print.
Are you ready for some football? He talks green and gold. 158, go! This is the Huddle with Bill Michaels.
Welcome back to the program. Glad to have you. Bill Michaels Huddle is brought to you by our friends at Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the Bill Michaels Sports Talk Network. And we're kind of going through that list of guys that they tried to fit square pegs into round holes for years and years and years. And one of the guys that I had mentioned, Lawrence Guy, Lawrence Guy was kind of miscast in Green Bay, and then he bounced around. He went to Baltimore, and now he's been a pretty solid starter for Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots. Still there, as a matter of fact, still over there. But yeah, I wanted to mention that because there was a couple of guys that left here and had a little bit of success, but not much. But Lawrence Guy is actually having some success in the Patriots situation. In the meantime, our buddy Dave Schrader from WBAY TV in Green Bay now joining us on the hotline. Dave, thanks for joining us for a couple of minutes tonight, man. Appreciate it.
Oh, glad to jump on.
So, we've had a chance to kind of sit back and decipher the season. We saw Nathaniel Hackett leave. Stenovich looks as if he's going to be going out to Denver as well. Give me your thoughts as to now, what now for this coaching staff? Are we assuming that Luke Getsy is going to get the offensive coordinator job and Butkus is going to move up as well?
I think that would be the hope. The Packers hope that they're able to promote from within and prevent further defections from the staff to join Hackett. I know when Matt LaFleur put his initial staff together, he wanted some assistants, was not allowed to have them. He wanted his brother Mike from San Fran, was denied on that request. So we'll see what the staffs of both Denver and Green Bay look like moving on to next year.
What do you think happens? I mean, there's been so much speculation. And first of all, let me say this, that all the rumors and innuendos that are flying around out there about Rodgers are just that. Until we hear something from Rodgers, something substantial, I'm not buying into all the different stuff that's going to be happening. They're already talking about the possibility of Justin Herbert and all these possibilities for trades down in Jacksonville, and that's not happening. So give me your thought as to what you think over the next few weeks and where this team stands and where Aaron Rodgers stands, and then obviously how that goes in conjunction with Davante Adams.
I think March 8th is the date to watch. March 16th, the new league year in free agency. March 8th, I believe, is a franchise tag deadline for the Packers to decide whether or not to use it on Davante Adams. And as we all know, deadlines spur action. There's a reason nothing's going to get done with the baseball players and owners. It's because the season isn't about to start. Deadlines spur action. So I think when they have to make a decision on Adams, Aaron Rodgers has to let them know by then for sure, and they have to pull the trigger probably on a trade by then for sure. I guess they wouldn't have to make the trade then, but they'd have to be committed to that course of action. And you lose some leverage when other people know that you're not committed to that course of action. So I think that's what we're looking at as a time frame as far as what happens. Nothing would surprise me, and that's crazy, right? Because there are a lot of options on the table. But I've learned from covering this man, Aaron Rodgers, and this team for 10 years, when you expect something, expect the opposite. From when I thought last year they'd beat the Bucs and go to the Super Bowl because they had the 1 seed, to this year I thought if you hold the Niners out of the end zone, you score a touchdown your first drive, I thought you'd win. No, just the opposite. So I think Aaron Rodgers has mended fences with Brian Gutekunst, but is that enough to wrap his head around the cap situation and the sort of retooling/rebuilding that might take shape is anyone's guess.
So offensively speaking, when you see, Luke Getsy would ascend, you would assume, how much do you think Nathaniel Hackett versus Matt LaFleur versus Luke Getsy versus Aaron Rodgers have a hand in putting together the offensive game plan and for those guys all working together? I mean, I guess my question is, how much do you think they're going to miss Nathaniel Hackett? Might be the better way to put it.
I think a great deal just because of the energy he brings to the team. People have talked about that with him. I've seen video clips of him coaching and teaching, and it just comes across in every fiber of his being is into what he's talking about. And you can't help but get excited about what the guy's excited about in front of you talking. So I think they'll miss it from that aspect. The gold zone was obviously better last season, 2020, than it was this past season in 2021, the gold zone, red zone stuff. But Hackett is a guy that is pretty much loved by all the players from everything that we can gather and by his fellow coaches as well. I think we'll learn a lot about Matt LaFleur as a coach based on the success he has without Nathaniel and possibly without Aaron as well. We're going to learn a whole lot in a hurry with this next season.
At what point do you think, and I said just a few minutes ago that I think that there will be the coaching moves and such starting to be made maybe tomorrow, maybe over the weekend during a slow, off-put news cycle when it's out of the public eye that Maurice Drayton is no longer with the team. That's kind of the way the Packers, when it comes to firings and such, that's kind of the way they work, is try to make that announcement over a weekend where there's not as many eyes on it. Do you see this weekend being a news-making weekend in Green Bay?
I would imagine that that's going to happen when it happens. This weekend could be likely. Bury it in the NFC and AFC championship game hoopla that's going on around the league. Mo Drayton, to me, just can't be back. I understand that they fired coordinators before and it hasn't fixed the problem. You can't oversee a debacle like that and return. I can't see it. And it may not all be on him. It may be on the caliber of players you put out there. Matt LaFleur lamenting, hey, San Fran had a lot of starters and special teams. Maybe I need to take a look at that. But still, the flaws were in every phase. Field goal protection, nope, had one blocked, cost you points. Punt protection, nope, had one blocked, it cost you points. Kick return coverage, nope, had one return to 50, led to the Niners' only field goal to that point in the game. And punt return wasn't a whole lot better. So, when you have that many flaws in that many areas in a game where it matters, and you have to be at a heightened awareness in the playoffs so that could affect the wins and the losses, that affect the legacies of players and coaches, I just can't see Drayton coming back.
Yeah, it's some of the things were just inexplicable. And I know Mike Clemens broke it down and where he's like, what is Oren Burks doing? What are these guys doing at 240, 250 pounds trying to block a 270, 280-pound lineman? Structurally, it just didn't make sense. And I agree. After going back and kind of watching that game over again, I'm thinking to myself, boy, some of these guys either one didn't try or two, that was nowhere near the responsibility, and guys next to them just flat out got burned. And it clearly Shanahan saw something where he said, hey, we may not be able to beat them in the offense and defense, but this is a phase of the game that we can dominate them and get points out of it, and damned if they didn't.
Yeah, the block punt, Wordle, the long snapper, was absolutely dump trucked. I know he was brought in midseason because they had issues at that position, but I don't think they found their solution with him. That's for sure. You cannot just be bowled over like that. You put that on film, everyone's going to be trying to do that to you next year.
Yeah, no doubt. Defensively, and I just threw this out there. So I don't know what the roster is going to look like, but give me your assessment of Joe Barry and the season that he had defensively, because in the end, the defense didn't fail this team. The defense actually played admirably.
I've covered this team for a decade, and I was chatting with some friends about this. And I said, I challenge you to tell me a better defensive performance start to finish in the game than that one right there. And in 10 years of covering the team, I know they've had a shutout of the Bills in 18, a shutout of the Seahawks this year. But to shut down the Niners the way they did was so impressive to me. Yes, you could have asked Eric Stokes to keep his head up, maybe have a pick six. But, he was playing his responsibility, making sure he was making a sure tackle on that receiver in the red zone. They had all those third down sacks, 4 of them, I believe, 2 by Rashawn Gary. They had the big 4th down stop as well. That defense was playing really well. And, yes, they had a lot of pieces back, and that could have cost them. Jair gave up a 3rd down catch. If he were in the flow of things, having played the last 3 months, how would that have gone differently? Well, it may have gone differently. He may have defended that route across the middle a little better. And then Zadarius run defense on that final 3rd and 7 where Deebo Samuel got him in field goal range. He jumps inside. I'm not sure if his responsibility was to stay to the outside more. It looked like that would have been his gap responsibility. So some guys that had some rust cost them in little moments, but as a whole, that defense played its butts off the entire game, and I think that was the best performance of the year. And when you're grading Joe Barry, Bill, I think you have to ask, hey, how much better are they than last year? Statistically, they rank right around the same place as Mike Patton's defense did. But the fact that Joe Barry did this type of stuff with stars like Jair and Darius, missing Kenny Clark for that Browns game when they gave up a bunch of run yards, I think Joe Barry did a great job this year.
So, I agree with you. So now this is what's going to happen, in my opinion. If we do have this changeover of the roster, and I don't know who's coming back or not, but we know that there's a lot of names that could possibly not be back. Devondre Campbell certainly has played himself into a big contract. Whether or not Za'Darius is back or Preston is back, Adrian Amos is back, we'll wait and see. So if some of these guys don't return and you're not able to supplement them in some way, shape, or form and find some other guys, Rasul Douglas, Whitney Merciless as well, and the talent isn't the same, but yet the defense begins to falter, suddenly fans are going to say, well, here we go. There's that Joe Barry defense. But we all know what he did with a talented bunch of guys. You know what I mean? You know what I'm kind of getting at?
Right. He had those poor defenses in Washington and Detroit, his previous coordinator stops. And the biggest difference is he had a lot of talent this year, yes, but he's also had a lot more experience in the NFL learning. And I think that if they do rebuild, they will rebuild likely around the defensive side of the ball. I believe it was a column by Tom Silverstein or Pete Doherty. I forget who wrote it, talking about how if you end up building around your defense, that could also help your special teams as well. Because if you're asking, backup reserve linebackers hungry to get on the field to play special teams more than your third string tight ends, you might end up having a better special teams unit as well. So I would expect if it's a rebuild, focus will be on that defense. It's an ascending unit.
The biggest need offensively, I think we can agree, is just simply going to be wide receiver. They've got Tunyon where they can bring him back. They've got obviously the run game intact. Their offensive line's pretty deep. And I think it's just a matter of the wide receiving core right now at this point, right? If you don't get Devontae back, I mean, who knows, but I can't imagine them bringing back Randall Cobb again. Alan Lazard has already said goodbye to everybody, and there was nothing special about anybody else other than Devontae. So my assumption is that that's where you're going to start. I mean, you picked up Amari Rodgers, but he didn't have that breakout, unbelievable season that everybody was kind of hoping for. So I think you got to go back to the drawing board with wide receivers, right?
I mean, completely the drawing board. If you're not going to get Lazard back, MVS, I mean, he could be cheap, but I don't know what his future would be. And you're right. If Devontae's out the door, receiver is going to be a cupboard that's very, very bare. If you don't keep Devontae, it's going to have to be ground and pound and defense around here, which with Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers for 3 decades is not something we've grown accustomed to seeing.
Right. No, I completely agree there that you're not, and Rodgers isn't going to want to come back and be a ground and pound offense. That's not what he's looking.
No. I mean,
he's not
Rodgers
looking for that
will
at
not
all.
come back unless Adams is back. Let's be clear. If 17's not here, there's no 12.
Do you think it really hinges upon whether or not Devontae Adams is back?
Well, that's a bare minimum. Like, yes, Adams has to be back, and then a number of other things have to happen, I think, to convince Aaron that this team can be competitive for a Super Bowl with what they've got to do. I was trying to crunch some numbers. They're about $50 million over the cap when you add in the fact that they don't have that many guys on the books with contracts. They have to add in a number of minimum contracts just to reach the threshold for the cap. So, Z, just because he's a $15 million cap hit, next year's got to be gone. I think P would be 13. Billy Turner, if you're going to start sacrificing the O-line to save some money, you could save, I believe, around $7 million there. But you got to still get millions and millions more. Adrian Amos has played great, especially with the postseason interceptions, but he can save you money if you get rid of him. I just think when you add all this up to get Aaron and Devontae back, convincing Aaron that that's not a rebuild would take a lot of something.
Right.
This year he was really impressed with what Gutekunst did, bringing in Rasul and Devondre Campbell on the cheap, right? But that's something that when those guys were signed, no one thought, oh, that's a great signing. It was viewed in retrospect as a great signing. So even if Goody brings in a bunch of guys that are cheap, that are veterans, I don't know if you can sell Aaron on, hey, this isn't a rebuild. Look, we brought in these guys. Well, the guys you bring in for cheap aren't going to have a splash factor with the fans, and likely wouldn't with Aaron either, unless he just really respects what those veteran players had done elsewhere before they fell off the cliff to become a cheap player. It's just guys that are cheap aren't going to impress you when you're looking at a team, whether they're a Super Bowl contender in the offseason. Maybe down the line if they perform well in your system, yes, but for Aaron to make the decision before free agency, it's going to be very hard, I think, to convince him that this team can win.
Talking with Dave Schrader, WBAY TV in Green Bay. Last one, Dave, and that is with the salary cap significantly going, not next year, but the year after and the year after that. Do you think they then bring back some of these guys, shortchange them salary-wise in the front end, and give them the money in the back end if they can keep the band together?
The problem with that is players in the NFL are so accustomed to not having guaranteed contracts, not seeing the end of their contract. You'd have to be really creative with how you build it in as a guarantee without paying it up front, because usually paid up front signing bonus money is just about, and roster bonuses year by year, just about the only thing that's guaranteed by these guys. So I'm sure Russ Ball and Brian Gutekunst are creative geniuses. They were last year to bring the 2020 team back to have a run in 2021. But it's going to take, I think, an even more monumental effort by those two to do it again. And that's why they make the big bucks. They're charged with trying to make it happen. The one thing I could see to try to convince Rodgers and save these guys is to really, really handcuff yourself 3-4 years down the line. Kick the can down the road in a big way to where when it comes due, it's going to be really bad. And then you just count and pray, will the TV money go up enough to offset the moves we're about to make now? Because the $208.2 million salary cap ceiling isn't enough to really get it done when you're looking at it. But if you were able to add void years like some teams have to players down the line, really knock down their cap number now, but know that the cap number is going to be astronomical when those void years kick in. When, like, you could give a guy, say, a 10-year contract when you know he's only going to play 2 more years. Right. Say you think Aaron's going to play 2-3 more years. You could give him a 10-year contract with a ton of money prorated on a signing bonus over 10 years for the books now. And then when he leaves in 3 years or 2 years or whenever, then the rest of the 7 years accelerates due on the cap immediately. You could take a huge, huge gamble and do that and say, I hope we win now. And yeah, we're going to be really hosed. And whenever he leaves in 3-4 years, like really, 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 really hosed, but maybe the TV money would be enough to offset that. Or maybe it's worth it to win a Super Bowl to really be in a bad spot. But the Packers have been so fiscally conservative and smart over the years. I'm not sure what's in their DNA. They got aggressive last year, kicking the can down the road. It's just a matter of what sort of tolerance for that type of thing you would have moving forward, and how much you believe that if you do this, you get over the hump. As much as we're all talking about, can the Packers do it? Will the parties want to stay intact? It hasn't netted them a trip to the Super Bowl in 11 years. So if you're willing to mortgage your future, you have the utmost belief it's actually going to get you over the hump, because you've had the 1 seed 2 years in a row and it hasn't worked. So perhaps it's the time to rip the Band-Aid off, as painful as that may be.
Dave, great stuff. Great insight, man. I appreciate it. And we're going to talk again soon, but thanks for joining us tonight. Okay.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it, pal. Talk to you soon. There you go. That is our good buddy Dave Schrader, WBAY TV in Green Bay. You can find him on Twitter at Schrader, WBAY. Schrader, SCHROEDER, Schrader, WBAY, over there on Twitter. Some really good stuff. So here's my question, following up on what Dave had to say. Now think about this for a minute. Is it worth it if you knew the Packers were going to get a Super Bowl? Would it be worth it to put this team in salary cap jail for a couple of years if you knew they could garner another one in the next 3 to 4 years? Would you do it? Think about that. Stay tuned. We got a lot more of the Bill Michaels Huddle, brought to you by our friends at Bud Light here at the Swagger Sports Bar in the Root River Center. Stop in, say hi on Franklin, or on Rawson Avenue in Franklin. We got more coming up after this.
This is the Huddle with Bill Michaels on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Network.
Bill Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 1 minute. Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
That's what they told me. I'm glad they don't. Welcome back. Glad to have you. The Bill Michaels Huddle, and it's brought to you by our friends at Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the Bill Michaels Sports Talk Network and of the Huddle each and every week. Glad to be here. We are broadcasting live at the Swagger Sports Bar inside the Root River Center here in Franklin, and got the bowling alley open. Got some people over there tossing them down the lanes. Dart league's coming in later on tonight, so all kinds of good stuff here in Swagger. You got the games up. The Lakers game and Philadelphia going at it. You got Ohio State on the tube taking on Minnesota at the barn in college hoops. So you got a lot of stuff happening right now. 877-867-1670, 877-867-1670. If you want to hit us up, give us a shout. This is from Josh. He said, I would do that because in 3 to 4 years, Rodgers would probably be gone anyway. So if you can keep this team mostly together for a couple more years, while Rodgers still has his years to play, I think if the Packers are going to suck, they should just go out and go with one big year and then go with no Rodgers in a few years. So that was the question. We were sitting here talking with Dave Schrader, WBAY-TV in Green Bay. And he's like, look, if you want to kick the can down the road and you want to have some voidable years and you want to pay some big contracts with guaranteed money and make minimal salaries this year, keep the band together, and then in a couple of years when those salaries start to come due, you really got to hope that the television money becomes large. Because God forbid anything like COVID, a mass COVID outbreak happen again, and all of a sudden you don't have fans in the stands and it doesn't go up, you're going to have a huge bloodletting when it comes to players on this team. As it stands, and we all know if you start to go back and look at the contracts right now for all these team salary caps, as it stands, the Green Bay Packers are in salary cap jail right now with the 31st ranked salary. They are $46.3 million over the cap, which doesn't really, it pales in comparison, actually, to the New Orleans Saints, who are $71.5 million over the cap. Dallas, by the way, 21.2. The Vikings, 12.1 over the cap. The Falcons are over by 5.7, 5.7 for the Giants as well. The Buffalo Bills, 1.3 over the cap. The Tennessee Titans, 231,000. And that's it for teams that are actually over the salary cap as of right now. Now, for the Titans, it's no big deal. You can figure out ways to get creative and get yourself a lot of money. But for the Packers, you got to cut off a lot of money. I mean, a lot of money. Chunks of money. Lots of chunks of money here in the next few weeks as you start to get into the salary cap phase of all of this. When you look at the multi-year deals and who is going to be making a chunk of change, obviously Rodgers, who's scheduled to make 46.1. You gotta get rid of that. If you cut him loose, it's a $20 million salary cap hit. So you gain $20 million. Okay, you gain $20 million. When you start to look at the salary cap for next year, you're going to gain. Actually, the dead cap hit is 26.8, so you would gain $20 million back. Za'Darius Smith, who is owed $14.5 million, his dead cap hit would be 12.5. So you would actually get back a few million bucks. The cap hit's 27.6. The dead cap money's 12.2. You'd get back about an additional $12 million there. David Bakhtiari, you're not cutting David Bakhtiari, by the way. You're not going to let him go. Preston Smith, you would gain back a few million bucks there. You'd gain back almost $13 million right there. You're not going to let go of Kenny Clark. Jair Alexander is coming up in the last year of his deal, so you can, even though he's a $13 million cap hit next year, you can start to spread some of that money out and get some money back that way. Adrian Amos, he is going to be a cap hit of almost $12 million, where his dead cap money would be $4 million. You would gain back $8 million if you cut him loose. You're going to gain back $7 million if you cut Randall Cobb. Billy Turner, you'd gain back about $4 million if you cut him loose. So there's a lot of money right there. Dean Lowry, you'd gain back $4 million there, and on down from there. And the other one you're probably going to take a cap hit on is Mason Crosby. Is Mason Crosby worth the additional $2 million to keep him on the team? 2.4 to be exact. Is that veteran experience worth an additional $2.4 million? So some things to think about. Some things to think about next year, without a doubt, when it comes to the cap hits for the Green Bay Packers. So what are you going to do? 877-867-1670. By the way, Josh says, if the trade for Herbert, for Rodgers rumors, got more serious, would you think that it's quarterback for quarterback, or would they have to include some players as well? I think it would be Justin Herbert and then draft choices. And I don't know how many, and I don't know what rounds, maybe a second rounder and a third rounder or something like that. But I don't think it would be, because what you're doing is trading a pretty good quarterback in Justin Herbert, who has not really blossomed yet, but has shown signs of promise and looks to be far superior to what you have in Jordan Love. And then that would be a guy that you would presumably have for a decade, if indeed he's good. So you're not going to get a ton. It's not going to be the Herschel Walker trade in return for a quality starting quarterback and a bunch of picks for Aaron Rodgers. You'd get probably Justin Herbert and some picks, maybe a 2, maybe a 3, somewhere in there. So that's kind of the way I would see it going, if indeed that's true. But I don't think that's true, and I don't think it's going to happen. Jeff says, with as smart as Rodgers is, he's got to realize with his salary eating a big portion of this team and the cap, that management won't be able to attract the other great players Aaron wants. I know he's looking out for his own well-being, but if he doesn't want a rebuild and wants a ring in the Packers uniform, he needs to rethink the financials to keep great players around him. One thing is for sure, I don't want to see the Packers in a huge future financial deficit after Rodgers were to leave and or retire. That's the question. Let's say, because I agree with you, I think Rodgers has to realize that. He's a very smart guy. We all know that. We talked about it a lot. But the question then becomes, one, would you kick the can down the road and put the Packers in, say, 4 years in salary cap jail if you knew that you were able to get to a Super Bowl and put all the chips in the middle of the table for the next 4 years? Would you do that? The second thing is, even if Rodgers took only $1 million in salary next year, while you would gain a good portion of that back, obviously, but you would then, in addition to that, you'd still be over the cap and have to make some changes. But Rodgers is going to have to figure out what he wants and how much of that money he wants to kick down the road. I mean, I think a lot of us are in the field of, hey, you're going to have to look, kind of legacy in the eye and say, I think I'm going to have to take a pay cut to keep some of these guys that I really want around me, especially if he wants Devontae. If he said, I want to keep Devontae, what do we need to do? And they said, got to take a big pay cut. I wonder if he would do that. Let's do this. We're going to step away, take a quick break, come back. We got a lot more of the Bill Michaels Huddle broadcasting live at Swagger Sports Bar out here at the Root River Center on Rawson Avenue in Franklin. We'll be back right after this.
This is the Huddle with Bill Michaels on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Network.
Bill Michaels will resume in 5 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 4 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 1 minute. Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
It's just been such a great experience to be able to take a little bit of a seat back, be able to look at the big picture of everything, both watching Matt as the head coach and then being able to assist Matt in all the offensive and play calls and everything and how he meshes everything together. I mean, it's just been an amazing experience. It really has. And I think the final thing is the culture. I mean, the culture that he's brought here, it's one of those things like, I mean, this is how it should be.
Those are the words of Nathaniel Hackett talking about Matt LaFleur some time ago. Nathaniel Hackett, now the new head coach of the Denver Broncos, is he has moved on, and he has requested to take Stenovich with him, the offensive line coach. You would assume that Butkus will move up, Getsy will move up, and those positions on the offense will soon be filled in different facets. So there you have it. That being said, this is from Pero, who says, how do you not consider the wild amount of draft picks we could get if we decided to go away from Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams? There's probably four first rounders. Then there would be the trade of Bakhtiari you could do. The O-line is very deep. I'm sure there could be a few other sign and trades as well. I don't think you're going to get 4 first rounders for Rodgers. You probably get a couple and then some additional draft choices down the road. People seem to think that you're going to get like a Herschel Walker deal where you're going to get like 6 or 7 or 8 draft choices. I don't know. I don't see that. Ben Kenny back in the studio. Ben, how many draft choices do you think you get for Aaron Rodgers?
I've always thought it was 3. Depends on the player package you get back, but 3 first, something around there.
You think you're going to get 3? I was thinking maybe like a couple of firsts, a 2, and, a 4 or something like that. Unless, of course, you get a starter.
There isn't really a precedent for a quarterback like this being traded, but we talked about Jalen Ramsey. They got 2 first-round picks for him, and he plays cornerback. Yeah. Yes, he's younger, but he's still expensive, but he's not Aaron Rodgers type impact.
Right. The argument is going to be he's got 3 to 5 years left. So is it worth trading away, 4 first-round draft choices for a guy that could possibly play 5 years? More likely 3 for a given. And then after that, you got to wonder if Father Time starts to catch up with him. You know what I mean?
Depends on who you are. If I'm Pittsburgh, the answer is yes, no matter what, because I'm set. The defense is great. You have weapons. There's some other teams out there. People have talked about Philadelphia. At roster's nowhere close to winning. So it depends on who you are and where you are.
Yeah. The Broncos have stacked trades as well, chips as well, because remember they got additional draft choices for Von Miller in that deal with LA, and then there's the possibility of like a sign and trade for say Devontae, maybe getting something out of him, because otherwise if you let him walk, all you're going to do is get compensatory. Which they don't get me wrong, they value the draft picks, but again, you're talking about proven commodities versus virtual unknowns that you hope pan out in the next couple of years.
My thing is you're going to enter that crapshoot no matter what.
Right.
I would rather enter it with a lot of ammo to try to maximize the chances you hit, because when Rodgers does leave or retire, it's either going to be Love, or if it's not Love, it's going to be someone else. You enter the crapshoot, but with a lot less to work with, right? Yeah. You'd rather be drafting or have picks to trade up to get one of the top 2 guys compared to taking someone at 15. Then you end up getting Paxton Lynch, and he sucks.
Okay, here's the next question then. Would you rather, as a fan, maximize the next 3 to 4 years, kick the can down the road, keep the band together, take a legitimate 3 or 4 shots with Aaron Rodgers at winning a Super Bowl, or cut bait now, begin a rebuild, just try to dump a boatload of draft picks back into this thing and turn it over to Jordan Love?
So that's the back and forth I'm dealing with right now, because I don't know if you bring everybody back like Dave was talking about. I don't know if the roster's good enough to go win a Super Bowl, let alone win an NFC. And the AFC is a lot more loaded. But I don't know if the roster is going to be good enough to reverse what's happened in the last decade.
Right.
So I think you can maximize a Super Bowl window by trading him, getting a lot back, seeing if Love is the guy for a year or half a year. And if he's not, then you have all the ammo you need to go get another quarterback. And you still are able to keep a lot of the good guys in the roster together.
Craig says promoting from within has worked out really well for special teams. Look, I'm not promoting from within for special teams. There's no way in hell. I'm going outside of the organization. And now that Sean Payton is gone, who knows what Rizzy may want to do down in New Orleans. But remember, he would then have to have a change in title and pay, because you cannot make a lateral move if you're under contract with another franchise. You can't go laterally. You can go up, but you cannot go laterally. So if you brought him in as something other than just a special teams coordinator, he would have to be like the assistant head coach or something if you're going to bring a guy like Rizzy in. Because I know there's a lot of people saying, well, Sean Payton's gone, now he can go. No, if he's under contract, he can't go. And he can't make a lateral move in the NFL. You can't ask anybody to ask somebody to make a lateral move. It would only be a move that comes up. So that's why Stenovich can go interview and take a job in Denver, because he's going from being an offensive line coach to an offensive coordinator. where, you got a guy like Getsy moving up and you got a guy like Butkus most likely moving up. But no, special teams, I completely agree with you. I'm not promoting from within by any stretch of the imagination. Let's do this. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We got to take a look at the games coming up this weekend. You got a couple of big ones. The NFC and the AFC championship games. Cincinnati taking on Kansas City. The Rams are hosting the 49ers. I wish the Packers were going to be there, but unfortunately, they're just not. Stay tuned. We're going to wrap things up and talk about these games coming up next on the Bill Michaels Huddle, brought to you by our good friends over there at Bud Light.
This is the Huddle with Bill Michaels on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Network.
Bill Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 1 minute. Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
This team's been through a lot, like a lot of adversity. We've dealt with a lot. We've lost games by making mistakes. We've won games, dirty. This is a gritty team. It's a salty team, and we just keep bouncing back. We don't really let anything freak us out. I mean, when we played the Packers last time, we were down 17-0. We came back and almost won that game. Rams were down 17-0, and we came back and won that game. I don't want to say we don't flinch, but we just stay calm, and we trust in each other. We trust in the coaches. This whole team's just full of football players that just love to play the game, and they don't really care about what's going on during it. But we're just going to keep battling. We're going to keep battling. We're going to keep battling. And then we've been winning more than we have lost.
Welcome back. Glad to have you back, as a matter of fact. Some good news tonight. Wisconsin, number 11, the Badgers, knocked off Nebraska 73-65. So good stuff there. And that was George Kittle talking about his team and their chances. Unfortunately, the Packers aren't going to be there, but this coming weekend, Sunday is Championship Sunday throughout the NFL, and it's time to make a couple of picks and analyze a few of these games. You've got Cincinnati, the Bengals with Joe Burrow and company on the road taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. And Kansas City got to come from behind win when Patrick Mahomes connected with Travis Kelce in the back of the end zone. Meanwhile, Joe Burrow guides his team down for a McPherson game-winning field goal to put them into the AFC Championship game, a place they have not seen in a long time. They had not won a playoff game since 1991. So you're finding yourself very quickly, as Joe Burrow is, in rarefied air when it comes to the Queen City. And as much as, people, I know the sentiment now is for Joe Burrow and company, wanting to see Cincinnati get there after all these years of toiling away. And I understand that. But Joe Burrow, just a tremendous game. He had the one pick against the Tennessee Titans, got the hell beat out of him, sacked 9 times in that game. He was 28 of 37, 348 yards. And T. Higgins was the man, 96 yards on 7 catches. Uzomah, 7 catches, 71 yards. Chase had a big day as well. He had 5 catches, but 109 yards for Cincinnati. That's his favorite target. But as much as I like the fact that they can run the football, as much as I like the fact that Joe Burrow is a blood and guts kind of quarterback and he's got swagger to him, the offensive line stinks. It's just bad. And they're going to end up getting that guy killed. So taking on Patrick Mahomes, who had such a spectacular performance in that game, 33 of 44, 378 yards, 3 touchdowns, including a 64-yarder to Tyreek Hill and the game winner to Kelce in the ball game. Kelce, by the way, 8 catches, 96 yards in that game. Patrick Mahomes was your leading rusher as well. 7 carries, 69 yards, and ran one in for a touchdown. There's nothing he couldn't do in that game. And remember, they said, hey, this thing's pretty much over. Go ahead and turn out the lights. And next thing you know, Tyreek Hill catches that 64-yard touchdown pass from Patrick Mahomes. It makes it 33-29. Davis gets the 19-yard pass from Josh Allen. And all of a sudden, it's back up 36-33. And it looks like all of a sudden you're going to have the Buffalo Bills pull it out. And then Butker kicks a 49-yarder as Patrick Mahomes in 13 seconds guides him down the field. It's 36-36. It ties it up. And then the Patrick Mahomes and company, they get the ball to start the overtime, and they take it right down the field and drop that 8-yard dime into Kelce's gut for the victory. So looking at these two teams, as much as I think the rest of the country wants to see Cincinnati win, I just don't see how Cincinnati's going to be able to knock off Patrick Mahomes and company. So I'm going to take the Chiefs at home, and I'm going to pick a score of 30-24. The Chiefs get the win in that contest. Ben, Kenny, who you got?
Here we go again. The Cincinnati, I would say, not hate, but mistrust. First, I have to say, I feel like we're not talking enough about Andy Reid in Kansas City. First coach ever to lead 2 different franchises to 4 straight championship games. He's been the best coach of this generation behind Belichick. And I still love him. I wish he won in Philly. But I'm taking the Chiefs, I think 36-32. I just think they're too good. I love the Bengals. I love Joe Burrow as a Ben Roethlisberger of this era next to Allen and Mahomes. But I just think the Chiefs are too good. Eli Apple for the Bengals against Tyreek Hill won't be fair. And I mean, we saw it from Mahomes last week. It's no matter how well Burrow plays, he still has tricks up his sleeve. So, yeah, 36-32 in a crazy one.
So there you go. That one's picked. Then you've got last week's game with the Rams down in Tampa Bay. And Matthew Stafford, 28 of 38, 2 touchdowns, quarterback rating of 121.2. He proved himself. For all the doubters that have been out there saying Matthew Stafford's still the same old, coming out of Detroit, this was a prove-it game. Going against Tom Brady, he did not blink. Brady was 30 of 54. For 329 yards, a touchdown. He also threw that pick and a quarterback rating of 72.2. Meanwhile, Matthew Stafford, 28-38, 366 yards, only sacked a couple of times, couple of touchdown passes, the longest being that 70-yarder to Cooper Kupp, by the way, that went into the end zone, but a 121.2 quarterback rating, and Akers ran the ball okay. Jefferson, 1 carry, 15 yards. Sony Michel was only 1 carry for 4 yards in that game. But it was just back and forth. and Leonard Fournette gets the 9-yard run as Tom Brady just guided him down the field, and Suckup kicks the extra point. Next thing you know, that game is tied at 27 apiece, and then it was Matthew Stafford time, and he guided him right down the field and gave Gay the 30-yard field goal range, and sure enough, he splits the uprights. And as time expired, the LA Rams get the victory down in Tampa Bay, and that was, to me, Matthew Stafford's coming out party. If Matthew Stafford goes on to win a Super Bowl, that game is significant. Not necessarily the game against the 49ers, even though McVay has not been able to beat Shanahan, but the fact that Matthew Stafford finally put it together when the lights were the brightest, and he could say, I finally had enough talent around me to get me here, and all I needed to do was lead my guys. So Matthew Stafford, which gets a big nod for kind of the validation game last week, I'm going to take Matthew Stafford over Garoppolo and company in the contest coming up on Sunday, because I just think the Rams top to bottom are a more talented team. There is something to be said for the grit. There is something to be said for McVay's or Shanahan's mastery over McVay. I don't know what it is. I don't know why it is. I don't know if it's just mistakes that he's able to force that team into making. But Shanahan was extremely good at looking at the Packers and saying, what? We can't beat you here and can't beat you here, but we're going to beat you here because there's something we can exploit. I would expect him to do the same in LA this weekend, but I still think I'm going to take the Rams 24-17 to knock off the 49ers. If the 49ers even score a touchdown, even though it's going to be in a dome, it's going to be better weather conditions, I still don't see Jimmy Garoppolo guiding that team down for maybe but 1-2 tops touchdowns in that contest.
I'm taking the Niners. Number one, from what I've seen, SoFi is going to be close to 50-50 fans. So home field advantage won't be much for the Rams, if not at all, if not a San Francisco advantage. I just think there's something to be said about the grit that they're playing with. Kittle talked about it at what I played coming out of the break. But that last game of the season, they were down 17-0 to the Rams. The Rams look unstoppable. McVay's running up the sideline at every touchdown. And then slowly but surely, they come back. They battle. We saw it against Dallas. They held on, but they made plays late. And then obviously last weekend. So I like what Shanahan's doing. McVay, for some reason, just can't beat him. And I don't think this is now McVay's due. I think there is something to be said about Shanahan dominating him. So I'm going to take the Niners. As long as Jimmy G doesn't throw 3 picks, I think they win.
So next week, we'll obviously talk about the Super Bowl and who's going to win that one. But if you're going to start hedging your bets, now you got the 49ers and the Chiefs, and I'm going to have the Chiefs and the Rams. Can you imagine if Cincinnati beats the Chiefs, what it'll be like out in L.A.? Cincinnati fans don't travel real well. They wanted to drive to Nashville to see that Tennessee game, but that's 6 hours away, 10 hours away. You can drive there. That's not a terrible drive. They're not driving to L.A. Can you imagine if the Rams or the Rams or the 49ers obviously are going to be there, but can you imagine if the Rams get the win and they face Cincinnati, what kind of a dominated hometown crowd that's going to be, because Cincinnati fans they're not even used to this. They don't even know what to do.
Or it might even be Niners fans at that point.
Or Niners fans, just being the West Coast, obviously. But it's. Can you imagine the home field advantage that the Rams are going to have in that context? Well, much like Tampa Bay last year, obviously. But if it was the Chiefs have a historic team, a storied team. They got fans all over the country. Cincinnati, that's a very, very, very. You talk about a fan base that's tiny. That's a small fan base. I would effort to say maybe they're better than Jacksonville. They're going to be better than, say, Houston, but they're not in the top echelon of good franchises that travel well.
Well, I would look forward to your apology to the city of Cincinnati on Monday.
I'll give it. We're going to have Dan Hort on tomorrow, the voice of the Cincinnati Bengals, and we'll talk with him about what he feels the chances are for Joe Burrow and company to advance. I just don't look. Two things. I think one, Andy Reid is a better coach by far, and secondly, than Zach Taylor. And secondly, I just think that offensive line is terrible. And as good as Joe Burrow was in that game against the Titans, he was facing Ryan Tannehill. He wasn't facing Patrick Mahomes. And I think Patrick Mahomes is the ultimate difference maker in this contest. So if they put the same amount of pressure on Joe Burrow and Joe Burrow is still able to throw the ball and still able to move the ball, it's not going to matter, because I don't think he's going to have enough to be able to keep up with what Patrick Mahomes and company can throw out there. Just my
There is one thing to watch, which I learned throughout my childhood, is Andy Reid does have a Mike McCarthy propensity that in the big games to mismanage the clock, waste his timeouts, and get his team into tough situations. Mahomes has been good enough for that not to matter at all. But that is something that I've just learned by watching him for the last 20 years. When it gets the NFC Championship game, there is something about Andy Reid that the clock just doesn't make much sense.
Well, we'll see what happens, but I still give the nod to Andy Reid. So that's going to do it. That's the program. We were great to be down here at Swagger Sports Bar on Rawson Avenue, Root River. We're glad to be here and play a part of it. Thanks to our friends at Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the Bill Michaels Sports Talk Network. Until then, time for us to get